Hello everybody, my name is William. Welcome back to ACC. I hope you all are doing well. Today we're looking at the Lexus RCF GT3, doing a hot lap around Monza with a setup for you as always. Hope you all do enjoy the setup. If you do, let me know how you get on with it in the comments below. There's going to be a link in the description if you would like to download the setup as well. There's going to be a link if you want to donate to help make more of these happen. I really do appreciate all the support, guys. Without further ado, let's get into the lap, and I'll be back with you to talk over the setup. Okay, that was a hot lap around Monza in the Lexus RCF GT3. Managed a 148 flat. Not a perfect lap. They seldom are for me, but mistake in the second chicane. Just losing the car a little bit, driving it in a little too aggressive. Nevertheless, we'll take a look at the timetable so you can see if you want to compare. I only went purple in Sector 1 on that lap. Actually broke into the 34s in Sector 1. Pretty nice. And then, yeah, giving up about a 10th in Sector 2 and about a 10th in Sector 3 as well over my purples. But, yeah, it is what it is. It's a tricky track, never been my best. But here's the timetable. If you want to compare to it, it's there for you. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the setup. For the setup, I started with the aggressive preset as always. We'll go ahead and take a look at what I used here. For your tire pressures, as always with these GT3s, you're going to be aiming for around 28 psi hot. A little bit under that is kind of where I like to keep it. You don't want to go over 28 psi, but your left sides are going to be the ones that build pressure and temperature the most. So you're going to start with lower pressures on that side, higher pressures on the right side to keep them in a good tire pressure range. And then ultimately I was trying to keep the rears just a little bit lower than the fronts. But still around the 27.5 to 28 psi range is what you're aiming for. If you want the front to have a little bit more turn in, a little bit more bite, you can try going lower on the toe on the front, so more negative. That could help you out with a little bit more turn in. On the rear, if it's a little too slidey for you, you can increase the rear camber. You can also try increasing the rear toe, and if you want it to be a little bit freer, you can go the opposite direction with those. For the electronics, I ran my traction control on 3 and my ABS on 3. That's what I preferred. Ultimately, you need to play with these depending on your track conditions, what the track's like, temperatures are like, how long of a stint you're going to be doing, that kind of thing. So definitely do play with these. You can find a lot of drivability, stability, and sometimes speed out of adjusting these to your conditions, but this is what I ran. On the fuel and strategy page, really the only thing to talk about here is the brake pad compound. I use 2, that's the one I like the most. It's generally the best all-arounder as well. If you are going for a quali setup, you could try compound 1 on the front and the rear. It does give a little bit more performance for situations like that before it starts to deteriorate. But yeah, that's ultimately I use 2 pretty much all the time, and that's what I use for this lap. Into the nitty-gritty of it now in the mechanical grip page, I increased the front anti-roll bar, the rear anti-roll bar, the preload on the differential, and the bump stop rates on the front and rear. I decreased the brake bias down a little bit, decreased the bump stop range on the rear as well. Ultimately, increasing the anti-roll bars, giving a little bit more support for the car. Increasing the preload on the diff to increase the support on turn-in, make it a little less snappy. Decrease the rear wheel rate to try and give a little bit more mechanical grip from the rear end of the car. Decreasing the rear bump stop range to try and keep the height of the car, the aero balance, the way I want it in the high-speed sections. And then increasing the bump stop rates on the front just to keep the front in line under heavy braking, and then on the rear as well, just so whenever it was getting into the bump stop, it would have a little bit more support on it if that was the case. Ultimately, if the car's a little bit too snappy on turn-in for you, you could increase the preload on the diff. You could also increase the brake bias. It does make a pretty big difference. And there is a little bit of sliding in the middle of the corner. It's kind of what caught me out on my in the second chicane on my lap. You could decrease the rear anti-roll bar and see if that helps you out a little bit on that end. Onto the dampers here, is a little bit of a black hole, basically, of just tons of adjustments you could do. But ultimately, I did wind up changing bump, fast bump, rebound, fast rebound. Trying to make the car a little bit happier over the curbs with the bump, or with the fast bump and fast rebound. Notably, the rebound, I felt like it was too stiff. I wanted the car to come off the bump and settle, so lowering the fast rebound to try and make that happen. One of the things I did mention was the car does like to slide a little bit in the middle of the corner. I note for me, it's whenever I release off the brakes too fast. And ultimately, what I think is that you could either try and keep the rear more weight on the rear with more rebound, but I think you're a little bit past that point. It's most likely either needing to soften the bump or soften the front rebound so weight can come off of the nose and onto the rear, or there's too much weight on the nose loaded up too fast, and increasing the front bump might get rid of that as well. There's a lot you can play with here, and there's more than one way to kind of skin a cat whenever it comes to setting dampers, and ultimately you just have to play with it. But this is what I ran, and it felt pretty decent to me anyways. Last but not least, the Aero page. Have the rear ride height up to 74. The front is still on 55, and then the brake ducts are just closed down a little bit. If you want the car to be a little bit pointier, a little bit more on the nose, you can increase the rear ride height. If you want it to be a little bit more stable, a little bit more secure, lowering that rear ride height would be where I would start. You really want to avoid adding wing. If you just can at all, don't add rear wing. But if you're struggling, you're wanting to kind of just build some confidence and turn some laps, you can add rear wing. It's not going to be the end of the world, but you want to try and kind of wean yourself off of that if at all possible. I wouldn't lower the nose any more than where it's at. I did try, and ultimately it just does some really weird things over the curbs and is a little unpredictable. So at 55, I kind of knew what it was going to do if I took the amount of curb I would normally like to take. Obviously, if you take too much, bad things are still going to happen, but that's the setup anyways. I hope you guys do enjoy. If you take it out, let me know how you get on with it in the comments below. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.